In this video, I'm going to talk about the stranding work and the intarsia work, or the fair isle work and the intarsia work that happens in the Gilded Age Garden Mitts kit. I've already completed the wrist here, which is the fair isle work, but the motions for that are the same as in the intarsia, and I'll talk about the differences as I go. So you can see when you've got color work on the front, when you look on the back, you're going to have these extra long strands that are just pulled across. And that's because whatever color you're not using, you're going to carry along the back of the work. So when you look at the pattern, every blue stitch is going to be blue and every white is white. The star is going to tell us where to put that first blue stitch, because we wanted to have it centered over our lower motif here. And so it was the 16th stitch on this mitt, because we're working on the left hand one. So this little tiny one, this first one down here, I counted 15 stitches and then started the blue. When I went to come back, I didn't need to count back again, because I knew that my blue stitch coming back was just going to be one before the blue stitch I finished with. So I didn't bother counting. Once I place that first stitch, I can count everything else off of that, and I don't have to go from the end of the row. So now, what I've done so far is I've done the first row and the second row. So here I am coming back on this third row, and I am just about to do that stitch. So I'm going to pick up the blue yarn that's in the back here, and knit 3 stitches. Now it's time to knit the white yarn. So I just drop the blue and reach behind to pick up the white yarn. I'm going to carry it under. The way to keep from getting too tangled is to decide which yarn is always going to go over the top and which yarn is over the bottom. So the white yarn comes over the bottom. I'm going to just knit with it, but I'm going to make sure that I've stretched these needles out and I've left this fairly loose so that it doesn't bunch up my other needles. That stitch looks big and crazy because the blue just started down here, so I have an end on the back. I can just tighten that down and it's fine. So we have to do 5 stitches across there to go across those whites. So I've done 1, 2, 3. Now 5 stitches across when you're making mittens is probably fine to carry across, but you might get a finger stuck in them if our stitches were a little bigger. So for the sake of showing you how to do it, I'm going to put in my needle as though to make my next stitch. And this time I'm going to cross the blue over the white, but not knit it. I'm just going to cross it over and then pick up the white again to knit 4, 5, and then when I peek and see what I did, is now that blue is caught behind one so that you don't end up with a big loop on the back that you can get tangled in. So when you have a long stretch, you just tie it in by crossing the color and letting it go. It does start to tangle it up a little bit, but it's not too bad. So now we've done that stitch, it's time to do these 3. So again, I insert the needle to make the stitch. Now I drop the white, pick up the blue, carry it across, and make my stitch. And as I move on, particularly to the second stitch in the new color, I tug backwards on the already worked stitches to make sure that I don't bunch things up. You want to keep it as smooth as you can. And so that means you just don't want them to get cinched up. So now I've done 3, and I'm ready to do white all the way to the end. So I just knit with the white stitch and drop the blue, and all the way along I go. What I want to show you when I come back is that with Fair Isle and stranding work, like on the bottom, that is really all you need to know. But with Intarsia, because you're switching when you go up, you have to cross. You have to tangle your yarn a little bit. You have to cross before when you make the switch from the white into the new motif. Otherwise, you get little holes going up the side of the work. So we're going to go across and come back, and this will give me an opportunity to show you too. If you're on this part of the mitten, we're also putting on a little garter stitch edge along each side, the last 3 stitches. So I get to here, and I'm going to knit all the way to the end, even though I'm in my, because that's how I'm going to do my garter stitch. And when I turn to come back, instead of purling back across the whole row, I'm going to knit the first 3 to make them garter. That way they won't roll up so much. That's really it's pretty, but it's also the purpose is to keep it from rolling over on the edge of the fabric. So knit 1, 2, 3, and then go back to purling. So this is purling across what will be the palm of the hand. Did something funny there. All right, that felt better. This is really lovely yarn, and it's got a loose twist to it. So sometimes if I get too tight, I start to split it. So it's it's a good way to just remember that you don't necessarily get a better product by making it as tight as you can. You just want things to be even. And also make sure they come out the right size. If everything is really, really tight, you're going to end up with tiny mittens. So we're almost there, and rather than count across and figure out when my blues are going to start, I usually pause about now and see that, all right, I know that I just finished this row, and so my blue stitch is, my first blue stitch on the row I'm doing is going to be 1 earlier. So I keep an eye out, I see it coming, so I'm going to do 2 more white. And now when I go to purl that blue, I want to show you 2 things. One, here we are. I'm just going to go to the white one is going to turn blue on this row. And I have to twist it. So my white one is here. I'm going to find that blue that's waiting for me. And I'm going to pull the white across, and I just tuck it under my thumb a little bit. Pull the blue around it. Purl it as I would, keeping everything spread out so that I know I'm not tight. And I have to do 3 blue, which are these 3. So now I have to do 3 white, 1 blue, 3 white, and 3 more blue. So here I don't have to twist because I'm not on the edge of the motif. I can keep the white underneath to minimize how twisty everything gets. I'm going to go 1, 2. That second stitch is often the culprit when you get too tight, so make sure you're pulling a little to the right with your right fingers there. That's 3. So now I'm right in the middle, bottom of my vase, and the blue is going to go over the top. Purl that, going to my next stitch and pulling these wide so that I know I'm not too tight. The white can stay under. 1, 2, 3 white, And then the blue is going to come over the top, keeping the stitches spread out. 1, 2, and here you can see this is why a hole would happen. It's not connected. But we're going to have that connect with the blue. And then we're going to carry along the white all the way to the end, keeping it spread out. And as we approach the end, we remember we're going to have to keep our garter edge going. And since we're on the purl side, we have to remember to knit our last 3 stitches. If it's easier, it's not a terrible idea to just put a marker in between the 3rd and 4th stitch on each side, and then you won't forget and carry on. And then knit to the end. And there you have it. And that is how you make your colors. And you can see that is starting to match this bottom little bit right here.